Chilly, good to see you. The squad have been back in training for the last few weeks, undertaking a bit of a pre-season programme. Can you just give us a bit of an overview, kind of what they've been up to and what the mood's been like around the place as well?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, there's not too many around, I guess. We've got men's players all over the world. So I think there's probably 6 or 7 guys currently downstairs, just primarily, I guess, working on a gym program. Early when they come back, we get that gym program going. So lots of running around the track, quite intensive training sessions with Tom Webster, who does a fantastic job. And then I guess the cricket element of it will be specific to their appraisals at the end of the season, really. We've now completed all the player appraisals that we do after the season. That sort of tends to focus the areas of attention and development for players, both here and abroad, but particularly for the ones here. They're pretty busy in the nets and getting in straight away and hitting and bowling to their development plans, really. So everyone seems pretty buoyant, decent break and fresh, and certainly working hard in the gym and getting themselves as physically strong as they can.
You've spoken a lot sort of since the end of last season, and we don't need to go over last season again, but how do you and the coaching staff go about sort of getting around the players and setting out how we want to move forward into next season?
I'll probably touch on the appraisals again, really. They're quite important meetings. We sit down with all players to reflect on the season, and it's an opportunity for certainly the player to air some of their thoughts around how they feel it went. And so they're an interesting process, and they throw up a lot of information for then the coaches to reflect on. Obviously, there's also the review from an analytics perspective. So Max Backhouse, our lead analyst, who's doing a fantastic job in that role, he'll come up with some really interesting stuff around either things that are key areas of focus to improve, or we've asked him to do a little bit of work about Division 2 specifically. So what it takes to win Division 2, does it differ to Division 1? So I suppose we dive into all that detail and spend a bit of time analysing that data to try and focus your attention on the practice that you're going to undertake over the next 3 or 4 months, really. You want to try and make that practice as specific as you can. It was obviously disappointing, but you've got to get that out of your system and look forward. And, I certainly feel like there's a huge amount of learning. Even though it was a tough year, a lot of the appraisals spat out some positive information and positive ways we can move forward. And I think that's probably the important thing for us to say, right, well, how are we going to keep learning as individuals, and how can we make this team continue to move in the right direction?
We've all spoken about sort of the importance of starting well next year, looking to bounce back to Division 1 at the first time of asking. I guess it's just having that positive attitude and going out and playing that positive brand of cricket will be the best way of moving forward.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I mean, ultimately, it's individuals trying to assess either why they haven't performed as well as they can, or how they're going to improve and learn from their experiences. I think that's primarily what we have to focus our attention on. It's how we can move players' games forward and how that integrates into the team. There's a number of reasons why we were challenged last year, and sitting here now, if everything goes to plan and everyone's fit and all our players are in good form, then we're very confident that we'll be playing some really good quality cricket and compete strongly. But I suppose you've always got to be aware of what could happen and some of the threats that might exist. We're still, for the most part, we're still a pretty young squad, aren't we? We've still got a lot of young developing players that got exposed to first team cricket last year. I suppose it's essential for us to try and get the overseas recruitment available and on the park. Try and get 2 overseas players on the park as often as we can to support that young group. And I think if we do that and we make some progress as individuals over the winter, then we will be playing some really strong cricket.
To touch on recruitment, we'll start domestically. So we brought Michael Jones in from Durham. We spoke to him a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying how pleased he is to be here and he wants to make an impact. What was it about Michael that attracted you to bringing him back to Lancs? Because I know he was here as a youngster as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, firstly, I'd just endorse that, really. Every time I've seen him in the changing room, he seems to have fitted in really well, actually, and seems almost, really quite comfortable straight away. To some degree, he's come back to his home club. He played through the pathways in the 19s, and I think you sort of sense that a little bit from him, that he feels really chuffed to be here and representing the Red Rose going into next season. More specifically around his skill set, I think clearly we saw a player who could add strength and depth into our batting across all formats, really. I think you can never have enough top three batters, so it's always helpful for having as strong a top order as you possibly can. You saw at the back end of last season that Luke Wells went down into a middle order role. That might be something that we look to continue, and Michael sort of steps up at the top. And then I think one of the key elements was his progression in the white ball game again. So with the retirement of Crofty, and then I suppose Dane even a year before, that middle order role in the Blast. I know he's played at the top in T20 cricket, but he's also quite keen to cement himself as a middle order and late order hitter, and they're very valuable players, and he's shown his capability in that space in the last 2 years, I'd say, and he's got another opportunity in ILT20 coming up to keep moving his game forward. So I think all round we're really pleased with that signing, and I think we've got him at a good age. He's had some good experience of first team cricket, and I'm really hopeful we're going to see the best of him.
So in terms of Michael, when we spoke to him again, he said he was pretty happy to be versatile and do whatever was asked for him. Would you rather see him try and nail down a specific place in the top order, or are you happy for him to sort of be versatile and provide us with a multiple different options?
I think it's always nice to have a player that can fit in anywhere, but at the same time, having been a player, it is nice to get some clarity around what your expectations are. And I think as we move closer to the season, I'll be looking for the head coach and the coaches to really firm that up. I've got my own views. I would see him batting in the top three in red ball cricket, and I would potentially see him batting in the middle order in T20 cricket. We've got a lot of top order players in white ball cricket, and he is really establishing that role well. But really, that's one to keep on the back burner for the next 2 or 3 months, and then firm up prior to the start of the season.
Also, over the off-season, Ollie Sutton signed his first full-time contract with us. Obviously, he's recovered from that injury that he suffered on his debut in the One Day Cup last year. What is it about Ollie that you think he can bring to this side, and that sort of impressed you and the coaching staff as well?
I think immediately, I went down to his game at Leicester this year. I mean, we've known about Ollie for a while, and certainly when I was in the second team coach role at the time, he was in and around the under-19s. So we knew he can get a bit of pace on the ball as a bowler. And then since then, he's proved himself as a very useful, club player at the top of the order. And in some ways has been, quite destructive with the bat in club cricket and managed his overs tightly with the ball. But what we see is left armers are always, an attractive proposition. It's a different angle. He's got a high release point, so he gets good bounce. He's got energy on the ball, so he's hitting good numbers with his pace through the air. And the boy can bat, he's so, when you package that all up, and he's also been through quite an interesting journey of playing 3 or 4 years of league cricket and doing very well, and probably really learning how to play the game. And then I think the challenge will be him having been very successful in that arena, and then just stepping up to a professional level and the challenges that face, really. What we've been really impressed with right from the start is his attitude, his commitment in the gym. Physicality is such an important part of the game now, and certainly as a quick bowler, you've got to be as robust and strong as you can, and he's absolutely smashing the gym up at the minute and has made huge progress in the short time that he's been working. So that I think will stand him in really good stead and bodes well for us.
I was just going to say, on Ollie, obviously he's never had that sort of access to professional facilities and training during the winter, so this is going to be a really important phase to him now as he builds in towards next season.
Yeah, and there's no doubt there'll be a few challenges there because, everything just happens a bit quicker at the professional level. Everything, in some ways, it's a similar game. You're still trying to get people out. You're still trying to score runs, but often, the pace goes up, the bounce goes up, and, it just might take a little bit of time to adapt. But we were quite keen to keep him around here. He was going to go and do a season in Australia because he'd done that for 3 or 4 winters, and I would assume really progressed from that and learned from those experiences. But we were quite strong with him to say, look, we need to get physically, particularly after his injury, physically get him right and really try and do some specific practice in the indoors to try and just expose him a little bit more to what he's going to get in April, which he's not necessarily had over the last 2-3 years.
And also this winter we've moved quickly to bring back 2 overseas who performed really well for us last season, Chris Green for the T20 and Anderson Phillip for the County Championship. Just to start with Chris, you must have been really pleased to secure his signature for the next 2 years of Vitality Blast after what he brought to us on and off the pitch last year.
Yeah, I think that one was probably pretty obvious to everyone, wasn't it? We could really see the impact that Chris had on the pitch, but behind the scenes as well, he was a big influence, and he brings a real positive energy and confidence to a changing room. Really good guy, really bought into what we're about and what we're trying to achieve. He's certainly a very, very impressive character, and his cricket really is just going from strength to strength. He's currently, I know he's played some 4-day games in New South Wales at the minute, so his 4-day cricket, red ball cricket, is going well as well, and he provides that option for us through the middle of the summer in between the Blast leagues, which is quite a nice option to have. So yeah, delighted with that signing.
It felt like a really great fit for both us and for him. It felt like it was a really mutual beneficial relationship. How keen was Chris when you spoke to him and maybe floated the idea about coming back? Just how keen was he to make that happen?
Yeah, it all happened pretty quickly, really. I think he enjoyed the experience. We pride ourselves on trying to do the right thing by players when they come and play at Lancashire, and we look after them as best we can. And, it's a nice environment. Dale's created a really nice culture in the team, and I think he enjoyed who he was playing with and where he was playing and how he was looked after off the field. So, that's all part of it. And really, it didn't take long for us to both establish that both parties were quite keen to keep that moving forward. So we got on the case with that quite quickly. Again, the role he plays in the team, he contributes with all 3 aspects of the game. He can bowl through all phases of the game. His batting was hugely impressive towards the back end, and he's a great fielder. So really, it didn't take long to try and secure that signature.
And Anderson Phillip as well. He was a bit of a bolter towards the end of last season, come and took 15 wickets, I think it was, in 3 matches. He's coming back for a longer spell in the County Championship next year. Again, what was it that stood out about Anderson's attributes and made you want to bring him back?
I suppose a bit of everything, again, a bit like Chris, really. Primarily, the 2 things you're looking at are the skill set that they bring to the team and their attitude, and really, he had massive ticks in boxes for both, really. Firstly, he was a really nice kid. He came over. I think everyone saw his effort levels. He was quite humble to be here and very grateful for the opportunity. And I think he had a lot to prove to us and with the West Indies and what he's capable of. And I actually think with Anderson, there's still a lot more to come from him. So I think there really is a top quality bowler in there, because he does really bowl some fantastic balls. With regards to his skill set, I think it just gives the attack a little bit of cutting edge, and people would have seen that with their own eyes. He's got good ball speed through the air. Like I just mentioned, he's got some really good balls in him. He can angle the ball in and hold it up against a right-hander. And, I still think there's progression there as well. And he's a great athlete, so he's in really good condition. He looked strong, he looked fit. He ran in all day, and they're the type of people that you want in 4-day cricket to just keep running for you. We're really grateful of Cricket West Indies, to be honest, and his team over there, because they agreed to release him for the start of the season, which they didn't have to do. So it's great to have him from April 1, and he'll be available for the first 11 games, I think.
I know at the end of the season, you and Dale spoke a lot about the bowling attack and finding different ways of taking wickets and having as much variety as possible. with Anderson, with Saki signing new terms as well, with Ollie giving us another option. You must be really pleased with how it's looking now.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, yes. And then I suppose what we've learned in the last 12 months is you've just got to be aware of the fact that, things can happen that push you off course. And that certainly happened going into the start of last season. And I suppose it's just trying to mitigate that risk as much as we can. Sometimes there's not a lot you can do. But, certainly with where we are at the minute, you feel quite comfortable and confident of the attack and the team that we're going to be able to put on the park. But you've also got to weigh that up against what could happen. Anderson could get injured. He could get called up for the West Indies. Saki might not be available, or for whatever reason, there are things that happen that can throw you off course, and invariably they do, to be honest, Alex. So you've got to sort of be prepared to change and move quite quickly. And I think that's the thing Dale and I will be quite cognizant of over the next 2 or 3 months, is saying, what if this, what if that, and try and have some backup plans.
With that in mind, then, in terms of overseas recruitment, are you going to look to do a little bit more? And is there like a specific target at the minute that you have in mind, an area of the squad that you'd like to plug if possible?
Yeah. We're talking to a player and their agent, and we're pretty clear on what that looks like at the minute. Again, availability, people were very aware of the challenges around availability, the opportunities that some of the best players in the world have with regards to franchise cricket. So not an easy task, that. And again, trying to work out how that all fits and structures into a 6-month county season. It takes a bit of time, and you need to keep a few options, I suppose, because but we are hopefully close to securing we're looking for an experienced middle order player, someone who can offer some leadership experience and real quality to just support the batting unit and bat alongside some of that young talent that we've got.
Just lastly on the squad then, with the amount of young players that made the debuts last year, you must be really pleased with sort of where we are with the amount of players that have progressed, the amount of players sort of waiting in the wings for opportunities. It feels like there's going to be a lot of competition for places next summer.
Yeah, and that's probably where we need to be, isn't it? And both Dale and I tend to be glass half full with that, and we'll look at the positives of last year and say that we exposed a lot of young players to a higher level of cricket than they'd been played before. They'll have took some learnings from that. They'll all have gone away and been specific about what they need to do, not only from the chats we have, but also they'll have started to figure it out for themselves. I think it's only right that good teams are often very competitive and tough to get into, and really that's what we want to be working towards, is to ensuring that we're getting as competitive team and selection around that first team as often as we can, really. And that might result in some less limited opportunity for some of our young players if everybody's fit, but that's not necessarily a bad place to be, because it means that they've got to work hard to earn their spot and get into the first team, and to be a good team. That's really where you've got to get to.
And just lastly, over the last couple of weeks, we've seen the fixtures released for the Blast and then the Championship and the One Day Cup. That must be really good to sort of focus the minds and give you specific dates to plan for, venues, and obviously starting at Lords in the County Champ as well. It's kind of doesn't get much bigger than that.
Yeah, no, it's great, really. And it's, starts to feel a bit real again, that, you're off again and you're looking forward to 25. And again, I suppose my head, I have a lot of positive feelings towards it, and look at all the opportunity that's out there for everybody. It definitely focuses your mind around, your what ifs and your recruitment, about where you might feed people in, and, certain venues will be a bit more conducive to this, and you can look at where you're playing at home. And so you can really start to get into a planning stage. We also start building our second team fixtures to try and, support that first team program. So yeah, it's quite an exciting time. It starts to feel and it comes around quite quickly, doesn't it? We're not a million miles off Christmas. We'll have a bit of a Christmas break, then we're back, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, we're not a million miles off going again. And I suppose, in some ways, the way the season went for us last year, I think a lot of us are stinging to get out there and certainly show what the team is capable of.
And a return to Liverpool as well in August for 2 one-day cup games. I know that was something that the members and supporters felt passionately about, and it's had a great response on social media as well. You and the players must be pleased too.
Yeah, and I suppose, the shout out for Dave and his team at Liverpool. It was a difficult relationship for 2-3 years, but to be honest, Dave and I have worked hard, and he's been a pleasure to deal with, and made it quite clear about their desire to host first team cricket again. So we've known Terry, the groundsman, for many years. Terry's going when I was playing, so he's been around a long time. So no dramas there at all, and we're actually looking. I think it'll be a really good time of year to go in August. I think the ground will be in good shape. I know our grounds team went down at the end of the year just to chat to Terry and see if they could help with some minor repairs and stuff. So, I've always enjoyed Egbus, where I made my debut. So, it's got a soft spot in my heart, and it'll be great to be going back there.
Perfect. Thanks for joining us, Chili.
Cheers. Thanks, Alex.